Adrian came along to see me without the snake in the Ministry of Defence one day. I used to run sort of adventurous training for the army as a hobby in those days. And he said, "John, we've got this marvellous idea of going to Conan Doyle's Lost World. And we think there's all sorts of species of plants and fauna and flora that have not been discovered. If we could get in there, we could bring back samples of this. It would be enormously useful to the Natural History Museum and so on." And he said, "Do you think the Scientific Exploration Society would support us again?" And I said, "Oh yes, I'm sure we'd help." "How do you intend to get onto the mountain?" He said, "Well, that's the problem. The only way we can get in from Guyana is to parachute." I said, "Parachute? Have you ever a parachute?" "No," he said, "but I'm learning." Well, I said, "I suppose you can, I don't know anything about the mountain." Well, he said, "I've been in touch with some people in Guyana and they say that it should be possible." I said, "What about the Venezuelans? Because don't they own half the mountain?" "Yes," he said, "but we'll land on the Guyana bit." I thought, well, I'm glad you can work out which bit you're going to land on first. However, back in England, the problem was money. And Adrian simply didn't have enough money. But the News of the World became interested. They wanted to pull off a scoop against, I think it was a rival newspaper, The People or something, and they wanted to have the headlines, "News of the World finds the lost world." Well, I said, "If you could send along one of your parachuting reporters to see me, I'll brief him, and then we'll get him out there as fast as we can." So, license was handed the parachute. I clapped him on the back and said, "Well done, good luck, give Adrian my best wishes and tell him the check's in the bank." Well, when he arrived, he found that Adrian was already on the airfield in the aeroplane that was going to take them into the mountain. And all the team were ready to jump. And so all this chap had time to do was to run over to the plane, climb in and introduce himself above the roar of the engines to everyone. "I'm John Licence from your sponsor, News of the World." And Adrian said, "That's fine, sit there, just follow us." "You've jumped before?" "Yes, I've jumped before." Follow us then, and you come down last. When we get on the mountain, we'll tell you what's happening." So it was a fairly short sort of briefing, and off they went. And as they approached Roraima, apparently the weather was bad, and they couldn't jump on top. So rather than waste the opportunity and have to go back and abort the whole thing, Adrian decided that they would jump to the foot of the mountain and then climb up, which he thought he could do. And so he gave instructions to everyone to make ready, and out of the door they went. Licence was the last one to jump. And as he was getting towards the door of the aircraft, he turned to the dispatcher and he said, "What do I have to pull?" He'd never jumped in his life. And the man said, "Don't worry, you're on a fixed line," and threw him out of the door. And of course he went out of the door and the parachute opened itself. And Licence came down last and ended upside down in a tree.
I first met Adrian in London, in a place called Kensington House, which is one of the outstations of the television centre. And I was working on, I think I was working on a series called Tribal Eye, which was about tribal people. And I got a message that there was someone who wanted my advice about something, and it was Adrian. And I went up and he was living in a little office really the size of a shoebox. And as far as I remember, he was working for our school's television or educational television. And what he wanted to see me for was to ask how you got into natural history television, how you joined the Natural History Unit down in Bristol. And I told him what I could, and I had added, as I always do, because it's only fair, to say, look, it is tough, you know, because an awful lot of people want to join the Natural History Unit. And Adrian looked at me with a steely eye, which you would recognise, looking straight at you, you know, almost pugnaciously, really, and said, "I'll get there." And I will never forget him saying that. It made a huge impression on me. And then I moved away, and I didn't see him, but it was no surprise to me at all when about 2 years later or 3 years later, there he was in the Natural History Unit, and doing responsible things and tough things. So, as I say, if you ever wanted an example of determination, it's Adrian.
sheer determination. And because he was so gifted in so many ways of climbing and parachuting and flying, we looked up to him, and he used those gifts all the time, and so was successful making not ordinary films well, but difficult films very well. He had that oomph, that determination.
What made Adrian a great filmmaker was that he cared passionately, not just about the natural world, but also about the quality of the images and the films that he made. He would push himself, harder than anybody else, and everyone with him, to make sure that he got the best results possible. I think another thing that helped Adrian make great films was his adventurous nature. You know, he'd done a lot of expeditions, he was absolutely comfortable out in the wild, and because of that experience and that knowledge, he was able to get people and cameras into places that other people wouldn't have even dreamt of.
I mean, it was very clear, I suppose, from the initial time we came together, we met in Madagascar. He basically would invest whatever it took just to get the shot that he knew was there if he actually stayed with it. So he would stay for hours on end watching, say, a group of lemurs or a shafaka or something, having observed them in terms of the way they reacted to, you know, with each other, and in terms of during the day, again, their various patterns of behaviour. And he knew that if one of them was going to make a move in that direction, that would provoke another particular counter action, or when they woke up from the sleep that they seemed endlessly to be doing, long, hot summer's afternoons were spent watching lemurs doing absolutely nothing other than sleeping. But he was there with his eye to the camera. He never took it off, and he was just in maybe a 15-second clip, and it may have taken him the whole day to do it, but that was it. He just would not accept anything less than that, what he'd already seen and was determined to capture with the camera in hand.
Adrian just always wanted to do the best possible quality images, you know, film or stills. And certainly his stills work is, you know, superb, and his aerial work, of course, is now famous.
We first met Adrian last summer when we traveled to Venezuela together, and we were lucky enough to be a group of young people interested in getting into film, and he took the time to teach us the skills that we needed in order to do that. So whether that was using the camera and the basics of doing that, filming wildlife, filming landscape, setting up the shot, and making it fit with the story. And I will always value my time with him. And I think the same goes for everybody who was on that trip and lucky enough to be there. You know, he was one of these people that, although he's a big hero to a lot of us and very awe-inspiring, he was also very approachable. And you always felt that he was right there with you in the moment and wanted to be there and was really enjoying himself.
Yeah, certainly from that experience, we've decided to take this forward and in his memory, set up some masterclasses to teach young people about filmmaking, about actually using the cameras, editing, post-production, storyboarding, So we've used his experiences, his inspiration, and teaching young people so that more people can come into the industry.
Clearly, you know, there is very little training in this business, and the more we can do to help youngsters be inspired by the natural world and then try and show the natural world for what it is, that's what the natural world needs more than anything else.
Making natural history films gets easier by the day. Compared with 50 years ago, when it was a hugely complicated business to do with clockwork cameras and one thing or another, since these days the natural world is so precious, you don't want to damage it in any way, and so you don't collect things in the way that we used to. But what you can do to focus and channel your excitement is to go out and record it, and anybody could go out and make a film. Try it.
Sorry, that was great. It's a good chest beat.